They said she was just the quiet one, the bookworm, the shadow of her glamorous twin. For 37 years, Olivia Grant watched her family celebrate someone else's light, while hers was ignored, dimmed, dismissed. But what if the one you overlooked was the one holding all the power? What if the woman you thought was small was quietly building a future that would change everything? This is not a story about revenge. It's about a reckoning, and it all begins on a birthday. One dinner, one secret, one box that was never supposed to be opened until now. The autumn air in Willow Creek was crisp and quiet that morning, the kind that wrapped gently around your skin like an old sweater. Golden leaves floated lazily from the trees lining Maple Hollow, the small suburban neighborhood where Olivia Ray Grant lived in a modest apartment at 17 Rose Street. The inside of her home was a quiet world of books, warm lighting, and leafy green plants soaking in the sun by the window. A kettle whistled softly on the stove as she moved through her usual morning routine, pouring tea, flipping open her calendar, and slipping on her reading glasses. She paused when she saw the red circle drawn around today's date. Written inside in her own neat handwriting were the words, birthday, me, and V. Her lips pressed into a flat line. She sighed, her hand lingering on the rim of her cup, and let the silence settle again. Then the phone rang. "Don't forget, 7 o'clock sharp at Azure Bay," her mother Eleanor said on the other end, her voice cool and clipped as always. "Vanessa made the reservation. Everything's already taken care of. Just don't be late." "I won't," Olivia replied quietly. There was a pause, long enough to notice, and then the call ended. No happy birthday, no warmth. She set the phone down and turned her gaze toward the framed photograph on her dresser. Her and Grandma Dorothy side by side in the garden, sunlight caught in the silver of her grandmother's hair. That photo had been there for years, always in the same place. Olivia stared at it for a moment, then looked out the window. The golden light outside poured through the glass and touched her face gently, as if the world was trying to make up for everything her family never gave. She whispered to no one in particular, another year of being someone's shadow. And then she finished her tea in silence. There was work to do. She reached for her coat, her canvas tote, and stepped out into the quiet streets of Willow Creek, where, for now, no one knew that today, something inside her had quietly started to shift. The afternoon sun was dipping low when Olivia stood before her closet, quietly weighing her options. She chose the same navy blue dress she had worn to the last family event, a simple, modest piece with a soft neckline. She ran a brush through her hair, applied a touch of lip balm, and stepped in front of the mirror. Staring at her own reflection, memories from her childhood returned unbidden. She remembered that dinner table, the smell of baked chicken and mashed potatoes, when she proudly held up her straight-A report card, only to have the conversation swept away by her parents gushing over Vanessa's latest cheerleading achievement. Another birthday, her 20th, flashed in her mind. Olivia had received a hand-knit scarf, while Vanessa unwrapped a Coach bag with a ribbon bigger than the gift itself. The memories faded as she blinked back to the present. She slipped on her coat and made her way to Azure Bay Restaurant. The restaurant glowed with soft jazz and polished chandeliers. Olivia paused at the entrance, adjusting her scarf and steadying her breath. The hostess greeted her with a smile and led her to the back, where her family was already seated. Her mother, Eleanor, in pearls, her father, Walter, scanning the wine list, and Vanessa, radiant in a shimmering gold dress. "Finally," Eleanor said with a glance at her watch. "We were beginning to wonder." Olivia checked the time. It was exactly 6:57. She took her seat without a word. The conversation predictably centered on Vanessa, her recent trip to Palm Springs, the celebrity client who complimented her fashion taste, the new necklace she just had to get. Olivia tried to share about the community reading group she started at the library. Her mother barely nodded, then turned to Vanessa again. Then came the gifts. Walter handed Vanessa an envelope first. "For our sunshine," he said. Inside, a voucher for a luxury beach resort in Miami. Vanessa squealed, hugged them both. "You shouldn't have. Actually, you totally should have." Then Eleanor passed Olivia a thinner envelope. Inside was a creased postcard of the Grand Canyon, dated 2012. The corner was torn. "You love to imagine," her mother said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Why not pretend you're there?" Vanessa leaned in. "That was mine. I was going to toss it. Guess it found a second life." Olivia stared at the faded postcard in her hands, then met Vanessa's smug grin across the table. "You're right," she said calmly. "You're the sun, and I'm the moon. But sometimes, even shadows know how to rise." The apartment was dark except for the amber glow of a desk lamp. Olivia sat in her reading chair, the postcard clutched loosely in one hand. The room was quiet, save for the slow ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of passing traffic. She stared at the card for a long time before placing it gently on the side table. Then she stood up and walked over to the tall wooden cabinet tucked into the far corner of the room. From the back of the top shelf, she pulled out a small, hand-carved wooden box. Its surface bore delicate floral engravings, slightly worn from years of handling. It had once belonged to her grandmother. She ran her fingers along the lid, opened it. Inside, a folded letter and a small brass key. She unfolded the letter, the familiar cursive instantly pulling at something deep inside her. She could almost hear Dorothy's voice reading it aloud. "If you are holding this now, it means something in you has changed. Something has finally shifted. The pain has deepened, but so has your strength. This key is for the day you realize your worth." A tear slid down Olivia's cheek, but she wiped it quickly. She moved to the living room floor, knelt, and lifted the corner of the rug. Beneath a loose floorboard was a small, built-in safe. She inserted the brass key, turned it. The door clicked open. Inside, carefully arranged, were rows of old Powerball tickets, bound in a leather notebook, along with a sealed envelope bearing the official lottery insignia. She opened the envelope with trembling hands. The document inside was simple, undeniable, a confirmation of a Powerball win. Olivia had matched all the numbers. The total prize? $350 million. Her breath caught. She wasn't surprised, not entirely. For 5 years, she had followed her grandmother's instructions, buying a ticket with the same numbers every week, in silence, in hope, in faith. Now, the silence was ending. She stood slowly, her hands still gripping the letter and the ticket. And for the first time in a very long time, there was light in her eyes. The night deepened, and Olivia sat alone in her softly lit living room, the sealed Powerball envelope resting on her lap like it carried the weight of another lifetime. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal, sliding out the crisp white paper within. The bold lettering was unmistakable. Winning ticket confirmation. $350 million. She read it again, then again. Her eyes scanned the printed numbers, then drifted to the screen of her laptop, where the official Powerball website still displayed the winning sequence from last week. Every number matched, perfectly. Her breath hitched. A flash of memory struck, 5 years ago, sitting beside her grandmother Dorothy at the kitchen table. "Promise me," Dorothy had whispered, "same numbers every week. One day they'll mean something." And Olivia had done exactly that. Rain or shine, tired or not, week after week, she'd bought that same combination, stuffing the tickets into a leather notebook like they were prayers folded into paper. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in a while. A man answered. "Clive Martin speaking." "It's Olivia Grant. Just wanted to confirm everything was finalized, right? The payout?" "Yes," he replied. "All set. The lump sum has been secured in your account. It's done." "Thank you," she said, then hung up. A hand covered her mouth. She let herself cry, not for the money, but for the validation, for the fact that, after all the years of being invisible, dismissed, overlooked, someone had believed in her, and that someone had been right. She stood in the middle of her living room, the letter in one hand, the key still on the coffee table. The light above cast a soft golden hue around her. Her shoulders straightened, her jaw tightened, not in anger, but in quiet resolve. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about power. And for the first time, she realized she had it. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows as Olivia stood in her kitchen brewing coffee with steady hands. The postcards still sat on the counter, but it no longer held power over her. The kitchen, the books, the quiet, all of it felt different now. The world hadn't changed, she had. She picked up her phone and calmly sent out 3 messages. Dinner at my place tonight, something important, please be on time. By early evening, her apartment had been cleaned and arranged. She had set the dining table, not with food, but with presents. The lights were warm, the air expectant. At 7:03, the doorbell rang. Eleanor entered first, followed by Walter and then Vanessa, who looked mildly annoyed but curious. No one said much. They glanced around, like tourists in a place they hadn't visited in years. Olivia offered water, then sat at the head of the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, she reached down, opened her hidden floor compartment, and pulled out the document. Without a word, she placed it at the center of the table. It took a few seconds for her family to register what they were seeing. Eleanor's voice broke the silence. Is this real? Walter leaned back in his chair, visibly sweating. Vanessa blinked, then tried a half laugh. Well, I guess it's finally your time to shine, huh? Olivia's expression didn't shift. She looked at them each in turn, calm, steady. Yes, she said, but this time, I make the rules. A week later, Olivia's apartment looked like a small conference room. A long table now stretched through the center, not covered in dinnerware, but with folders, pens, legal pads, and a pitcher of lemon water. This wasn't a family gathering. It was business. On one side sat Olivia, dressed simply but with unmistakable authority. Beside her were 2 professionals, Clive Martin, the lawyer with silver temples and an iron voice, and Sarah Chin, a sharp-eyed financial advisor who barely glanced up from her tablet. Across from them, Eleanor, Walter, and Vanessa sat tensely. The air was taut with uncertainty. Clive opened. Today's meeting has been called to define the structure and management of Ms. Olivia Grant's financial assets as directed by her explicit instructions. Olivia stood, voice calm and even. I didn't call this meeting to punish anyone. I have no interest in revenge. But I do need something I've never had from this family: justice and freedom. Eleanor scoffed lightly. So you're dividing the money? No, Olivia said, her gaze direct. I'm not dividing anything. I'm investing in change. Then she laid out the plan. To her father, your company's debts will be cleared, but the funds will be placed in a monitored trust. Every dollar will be tracked, audited, and approved. No more backdoor deals. To both parents, you'll receive full medical and retirement support, but you won't get a lump sum. It will be distributed in scheduled allowances. This isn't a handout. It's protection for all of us. Then she turned to Vanessa. If you want support, there are 3 conditions. 1, begin therapy, real therapy. 2, complete financial counseling. 3, commit to volunteer work every month at a non-profit of my choosing. Vanessa stared, stunned. This isn't money for spending, Olivia finished. It's a second chance to correct a life lived wrong. And with that, the game officially changed. Exactly 1 year had passed since Olivia's world had quietly, powerfully shifted. Now, under a pale morning sky, a small crowd gathered outside the newly opened Dorothy Light Foundation, nestled in the heart of Willow Creek. The building, clad in warm redwood and glass, radiated the very essence of what Olivia had built: quiet dignity, hope, and healing. Inside, soft instrumental music played as visitors walked through the hallways lined with photos, children laughing, studying, healing. Walls told stories of resilience, of second chances. At the podium in the central hall, Olivia stood in a simple navy suit, her voice strong and sure. I used to think I was small, she said, eyes scanning the room. But my grandmother, Dorothy, believed in me before I ever believed in myself. She planted a seed I didn't know was growing. Today, this foundation is its bloom. The Dorothy Light Foundation was more than a building. It was a mission. It offered counseling and protection for children who had suffered abuse, provided scholarships to underprivileged students, and hosted workshops on mental health, healing, and emotional resilience. It was a sanctuary for those who'd been made to feel invisible, like Olivia once had. Among the new staff was someone no one had expected to see in this setting, Vanessa. She had taken a position as a coordinator in the Foundation's community education program. At first, she did the bare minimum. Her high heels echoed against the wooden floors with a rhythm of reluctance. But slowly, something began to shift. In the faces of the troubled teens she worked with, Vanessa started seeing herself. Not the glamorous, confident woman she showed the world, but the insecure, overlooked girl beneath the shimmer. Each conversation, each workshop chipped away at her facade. And one afternoon, as she helped a shy teenage girl write a college application essay, Vanessa smiled. Genuinely. She hadn't expected it, but for the first time, she wasn't doing this because she had to. She was doing it because it mattered. And though Olivia never said a word, she noticed. Quietly, she watched her sister begin the journey she herself had taken not long ago. A journey not toward the spotlight, but toward the light within. The grand hall of the Dorothy Light Foundation buzzed softly with anticipation. The event, titled Stories to Heal, had drawn a full crowd of students, teachers, and families. The stage was simple, framed by warm lights and a single microphone. The air felt personal, intimate. And then Vanessa stepped up. She wore no glittering dress, no designer heels. Just a smart, simple outfit and a nervous resolve. It was the first time she had volunteered to speak. She didn't have a script. She didn't need one. "I used to be someone people admired," she began. "But the truth is, I didn't admire myself. I was cold. I lacked empathy. I hurt the one person who loved me unconditionally, my sister." She paused, eyes flickering toward the back of the hall, where Olivia stood silently among the audience. "For years, I called her the girl who lived in books. I thought her world was small, but now I realized she was building a world big enough to save others, me included." The room fell still. "I want to introduce something new," Vanessa continued, her voice growing steadier. "It's called From the Shadows, a space for teens who feel like the background characters in their own lives. We're going to bring them forward." The crowd erupted in gentle applause. Olivia didn't clap. She didn't need to. Her eyes glistened with something deeper, recognition. Their gazes met. No apology was spoken, but none was needed. They understood each other now, not as sun and moon, but as two different kinds of light. On December 24th, the Dorothy Light Foundation was aglow with soft golden lights, garlands, and the scent of cinnamon. A towering Christmas tree stood proudly in the center of the hall, adorned with handmade ornaments crafted by the children the foundation had helped over the year. Olivia moved through the crowd with ease, greeting families, staff, and guests. Her laughter rang brighter than the bells hanging over the entrance. This wasn't just a holiday party, it was a celebration of what healing looked like. Then, as if part of the evening's magic, Eleanor and Walter appeared at the doorway. Olivia froze for half a second. Her parents looked different, not in appearance, but in posture. Gone was the stiff pride. In its place was something humbler, raw. Walter stepped forward, voice shaking. "You've become the person we should have seen all along." "I'm sorry, Olivia." Eleanor reached out, tears in her eyes, and pulled Olivia into an embrace. It was the first time they had touched in years without tension. They sat together at one of the small round tables, surrounded by the hum of children's laughter and distant carols. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. For once, no one fought to be the center. Later, Olivia stood in the middle of a circle of children, leading a carol. As their voices filled the room, light from the Christmas tree danced across her face. She wasn't in the shadow anymore. She was right where she belonged. The early spring sun rose gently over Willow Creek, casting soft gold across the courtyard of the Dorothy Light Foundation. Tables were arranged with care, decorated not with extravagant centerpieces, but with hand-painted jars filled with wildflowers. Laughter echoed lightly through the air, mingling with the sound of children's voices, practicing a birthday song just off to the side. It was Olivia and Vanessa's birthday again, but this time, nothing about the day felt like it had in years past. There was no luxury venue, no expensive champagne, no seating charts designed to flatter, just a warm breeze, community, and the kind of love that takes time to earn. Children ran freely, weaving between adults, handing out homemade cookies. Staff and volunteers chatted with ease. Everything felt lighter, freer. In the middle of it all, Olivia stood, serene, accepting quiet greetings and simple hugs. She wore a soft cream dress, nothing flashy, but it suited her, like light itself. As the crowd gathered near the modest stage built at the edge of the lawn, a hush fell over the space. Vanessa stepped forward, holding a piece of paper, her hands steady, eyes bright. She took a breath. "There was a time," she began, "when I believed I was the sun, blazing, bright, the center of everything. And I believed my sister was just the moon, quiet, distant, following." A few people glanced toward Olivia, who stood toward the back near a tree, listening. "But I was wrong," Vanessa continued, her voice clear and full, "because the truth is, the brightest light I've ever known didn't come from me. It came from Olivia Grant. She lit the way for others, even when no one looked in her direction. And she did it without asking for applause." She looked straight at her sister. "Happy birthday, Olivia. Thank you for being the light I never knew I needed." The audience broke into applause, some wiping their eyes. Olivia smiled, her expression gentle, filled with something deeper than pride, peace. As the children gathered to sing, Olivia quietly slipped away for a moment and entered her small office inside the foundation building. It was still and sun-drenched. She walked to the shelf and touched the frame that held the photo of Grandma Dorothy, their smiles frozen in time. She whispered, "I did it, Grandma." Outside, laughter rose again, joined by voices singing. The sunlight crept higher, glinting off the glass windows of the foundation and flooding the room with warmth. And in that moment, the woman once seen as a shadow stood entirely, unmistakably in the light. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the deepest truths, and sometimes strength doesn't roar, it rises in silence, through grace, choice, and the courage to forgive. We all have a light within us, waiting for the moment we choose to let it shine, not to outshine others, but to illuminate the path forward. If this story touched something in you, let it be a reminder. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Thank you for joining us. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart.